2 years ago, we went off the rails, talking and tasting food on railways and in railway stations here and around the world with Asia traveller and writer Caroline Eden and travel journalist Simon Calder. If you like that, I think you might enjoy this. Food on motorways, why it is the way it is, what it used to be, and what a different model, already up and working, could do for us all. For this week's food programme, we're on a road trip, heading to those in-between places, a stop for a tea, a pee, and maybe a bite to eat while en route from A to B. They're functional and necessary, with almost a poetry to their names.
Burton Wood, Hartshead Moor, Woolly Edge, Membury, Lee Delamere, Taunton Dean, Birchhanger, Pease Pottage, which is a very good name. It sounds like a service station and a meal.
In this programme, we're going to try to find out what that almost poetry tells us about meals on the road, about Britain, and about us. The UK has about 100 motorway service areas, MSAs in the jargon, keeping us travelling public fed and watered. They were built exactly where they are, no further than 28 miles apart, to give drivers the chance of a break from the wheel every 2 hours or so, standards set by the Ministry of Transport. The most recent surveys suggest most of us are fairly happy with what these rest stops provide.
I'm Louise Coward and I'm Head of Insight and Evidence at Transport Focus. So we're the watchdog for transport users. When you go in, there's lots of brands. There used to be limited brands and the main offering may have felt a bit like school dinners, but now it's a bright environment. There's a choice of familiar brands across a range of budgets.
Familiarity with brands. We'll come back to that national trait later. 3 years ago, Transport Focus surveyed 250 people at every motorway service station in the country.
In terms of the quality of the food and drink, 91% thought that it was very or fairly good. So pretty high, slightly lower on the range of food and drink available, but still 86% thought it was very or fairly good. Where there was perhaps sort of less satisfaction was around the value for money, and there it was only 64%.
A more downbeat picture was painted by the AA in its most recent survey of more than 12,000 of its members in May this year. Edmund King is the AA's president.
More than a third of people were kind of neutral or didn't really have an opinion. So it's almost as if they kind of accept motorway services. They're not going to love them. They're not going to hate them. They accept them. The price of the food, I guess, was the biggest issue. Almost a third, 31% said the price of the food was poor, whereas the actual range of food, people were much more positive. 38% thought there was a good range of food, and 34% thought the quality of food and drink at the services was good, as opposed to 11% who thought it was poor. So I do think over the last probably decade, the choice of food has improved a lot. You know, you are now beginning to see Waitrose, Marks and Spencer shops, Pret-a-Manger, Greggs. There's more variety than there used to be, say, 5 or 10 years ago. It would be good, though, I think, to see a little more imagination, because they are much of a muchness. They're all kind of 60s type buildings. They all offer very similar kind of outlets of burgers and fast food. And there's perhaps not that much imagination in terms of what they offer.
Much of a muchness with a heavy dose of fast food and a reflection of all that's stultifying about food beyond the motorways. Well, some lorry drivers we spoke to in Wiltshire thought so.
Service stations are awful, the facilities are awful, the food's awful.
There's hardly anywhere now you can get a hot meal on a china plate with a metal knife and fork. It's all fast food. They say about the obesity problem, it's just all KFC, McDonald's, all the rest of it. It really is bad.
The food's got so bad, I think, service stations and stuff, that people don't want to eat it. Whereas 40 years ago, the food was being cooked, and it was home cooked food. It was cottage pie or liver and bacon or whatever. It was the good old-fashioned stuff. Now it's the same thing, but the food is 10 times worse.
Cottage pie and liver and bacon, the ghost of proper meals past, still lingers over what we think of motorway food today. So before we go forward, let's head back, right back to where it all began. The advent of the motorways ushered in a new age of opportunity, according to a grand pomp and circumstance film produced in 1959 by the Midland Region Film Unit of the BBC.
This is the beginning of something new, something in which up to now Britain has been lagging a quarter of a century behind the times and behind most other countries. This first stretch of the London to Yorkshire motorway up to Birmingham is the start of a network of brand new highways. Eventually, that network will cover the whole country.
But Transport Minister Ernest Marples had stern words of warning.
It will bring immense benefits if drivers use discipline, common sense, and obey the rules. But disaster and tragedy may descend on those who drive recklessly or selfishly. For on this magnificent road, the speed which can easily be reached is so great that senses may be numbed and judgment warped.
The arrival of these warp-speed motorways heralded the dawn of the service station.
Motor vehicles can't run without petrol. On this side, the planning hasn't kept pace with the building of the motorway. But here's Frederick Carter, the architect of one of the two service stations which are to be built.
If, having replenished your car, you require refreshment, then you go through there where there is restaurant facilities, a transport cafe, toilet facilities.
I'm Dr. David Lawrence. I'm an associate professor at Kingston University, London, and I've spent much of my adult life researching motorway service areas, visiting them, staying at them, and generally immersing myself in the wonderful world of motorway services. Service stations were created by the government simply to stop people crashing their cars. People crashing because they were hungry or they needed the toilet. That's the only reason the government wanted service stations back in the late 1950s. And they had no recognisable brands. Everything was slightly out of place. And to me, they were, I suppose, bits of town dumped down in the country.
What food was on offer?
It was transport cafe food with a bit more glamour. So essentially fried English food, tea, coffee. Some places had zero alcohol beer, even in the early 1960s. And as the industry began to realise that it had a totally captive audience, and that's really important to remember for the future of motorway service stations, this captive audience could be served anything, really. In some places, very simple food and some sandwiches were provided, and other service area operators, for example at Leicester Forest East, owned fishing fleets and would bring fresh fish, fresh seafood to the service station every day, and people could dine in banquet style and eat very beautiful, very delicious food.
Good Lord. So what happened to that?
Well, most of us don't want to stop at the services because they are only a pausing point between home and where we need to get to. It's not like going out for a meal in a town. It's not a deliberate act. We just have to stop. So the time that people were prepared to give to the service stations was not sufficient to enjoy a three-course meal, or indeed to give a chef time to prepare something really good to eat. But when the first service stations opened, so Newport, Pagnell, through to probably Leicester Forest East, so 1959 through to about 1966, people would drive out to the motorway on a Sunday in the family car with the family, dressed up, have an amazing cooked meal, maybe grilled food or proper dining food, and then drive home again. And that would be a Sunday outing.
It's amazing to think there was once a certain glamour about this.
There was absolute glamour, in the same way that there was glamour going to the top of the BT Tower and eating in the revolving restaurant. That glamour is there, but for some reason the motorways lost it.
Then we got to the point where the franchises came. When was that and why?
The main motorway service area operators, Granada, Fortes, Road Chef, realised that their big problem was they had no recognisable brands. The service area operators realised that to hire out space to a franchise meant that a brand name would come into the service station. Through negotiations with the government ministries, that brand name could then appear on the motorway signs advertising the location of the service station. And drivers would begin to recognise those brands from their own high streets, and that familiarity of brand would therefore draw the travellers into the service station.
Dr. David Lawrence. And so the brand was parked into our motoring consciousness. The majority of motorway services in the UK are now owned by 3 companies, either Moto, Welcome Break or Road Chef. Moto and Welcome Break chose not to take part in this programme, but Road Chef accepted our invitation.
So my name's Dan Sutton. I am Brands Director at Road Chef. My role involves looking after all of our relationships with branded catering businesses, whether that be McDonald's or Costa Coffee or Pret a Manger or Leon or all of the various brands that we work with.
And how many motorway service stations does Road Chef have?
We have 31 currently, always looking for opportunities to expand our network, but we stretch as far north as sort of just south of Glasgow, far southwest as Taunton Deane, far southeast as Folkestone. It's a truly UK-wide business.
Talk me through the food offering.
So dependent on the site, it's a slightly different brand lineup and food lineup dependent on where you stop and sometimes when you stop. We try and offer real choice about the food that you would experience, as high quality as possible, but typically the roadside food offer is about familiarity. It's about having things that customers want and is often aligned with what you would see on the high street. So we have a very large relationship with McDonald's, so 30 McDonald's restaurants in all but one of our sites. We then have Costa Coffee in all of our sites. It's a really variety-based offer at times, but there are some sites that are much smaller, some sites that are much bigger, so it really does depend where you're stopping.
How do you think the public perceives food at service stations?
I'd hope that they would see that operators on the roadside, us especially, try to give as much choice and as much quality as possible. I suppose there is a bit of a trope that service station food is pretty lowbrow and can sometimes lack quality, but that's certainly not the intention that we have.
So let's sort of get down to basics. How does the business work?
So we have a real mix in our business. We have some sites that we own freehold. We have some sites that we lease from the government, and we have some sites that we lease from private landlords. So a real mixed bag. Some of our government leases have just been renewed recently. We were really, really proud to announce that. Some long leases with the government, which is a fantastic partnership that we have with them.
Road Chef just recently secured extensions to 5 of its services at Clackett Lane, Watford Gap, Northampton, Sandbach and Strensham for 75 years. Positively biblical. Dan, those new leases, they're for a pretty long time.
It is a long period of time, and we're really proud to be able to strike that relationship with National Highways and the government, because we know that we play a really important part in the motorway network. I suppose the length of time that we want is as long as possible. Clearly, we want security of tenure. We want the ability to invest. Often motorway service areas are quite expensive places to maintain, to build, to grow, to develop, and our ability to do that is predicated on knowledge that we will be able to operate at those sites for years to come.
Very long leases from the government for some of these sites, but ownership of those leases is something else. It's a complicated story, but worth a listen. The leases change more frequently because they're owned by private equity companies. Private equity is the collective name for companies and funds that borrow money on the global market from investors to reinvest in companies, usually for 5 to 10 years, hoping for a high return. Private equity because, well, the public has no right to know where the invested money comes from or the details of what they do with it. And if you're running a private equity firm, you're looking for what the financial industry calls cash cows. And some believe motorway service stations are cash cows par excellence, as millions of us dash up and down motorways needing what they offer. So, currently, Moto is owned by a fund set up by the university's superannuation scheme, a pension fund for academics, in partnership with CVC Capital Partners, a Jersey-based private equity company. Until 2015, they were owned by another PE giant, the one that now owns Roadchef. Welcome Break is owned by Applegreen. They run motorway services in the US and Ireland, and are in turn majority owned by the largest private equity company in the world, Blackstone, based in the USA, and they are big investors in UK real estate. Roadchef is owned by a private equity fund run by the Australian bank Macquarie. Macquarie became well known in the UK when another of its funds owned Thames Water from 2006 to 2017. I asked Brands Director Dan Sutton how private equity ownership affects how Roadchef is run. He said he couldn't speak for Macquarie, but presumed they see an opportunity to add value to our business, investing in new service stations, electric vehicle charging, and improving the experience in our hotels, food and beverage. Right now, offering well-known brands appears to be the heart of Macquarie Roadchef's motorway service model.
I think the food landscape in the UK is very different from continental Europe. I think our consumer is typically one that searches for brands and for familiarity in a way that is probably slightly different on the continent.
It seems unkind to say this to the Roadchef Brands Director, but I find it quite depressing when you say, well, in this country, we're more comfortable with brands, we like brands. I think, oh no, we're not willing to take a chance on a bit of originality.
We would love to be able to do that, but in the knowledge that we have 55 million people who stop with us each year who are typically looking for familiar brands that they're used to, they know what they're going to get. And if that view changes over time, we will always look to respond to that. We cater for everybody all the time, 24/7, 365, and finding an offer that is suitable for that diversity often means convergence on, as I said, familiarity, notwithstanding the desire to offer choice and real choice around what people might want. But fundamentally, yes, it is a brand-centric offer, and I suspect for the short to medium term will always be in line with the rest of travel retail, travel food. It's not something where you typically find stuff that is really out there. You might find that in city centres or at potentially festivals, but I think travel retail will remain a fairly familiar space for some time. Familiarity. What else is there to say about most motorway service station food? It's what we're used to, transplanted from the town centre to the motorway. And depending on which survey you believe, it seems we're quite happy, or at least not too bothered by it. But in one small part of that world of motorway straddling rest stops, there's been something different going on, another way. One that doesn't involve big brands and international finance. So let's move on into that world. It's not quite the freshly cooked fish and white tablecloths from Leicester Forest East in the 1960s, but they're doing something very different. When Which magazine ran a survey ranking the best motorway service stations in Britain in 2024, 3 of the top 4 were owned and run by the same family, the Dunnings. Those services were Gloucester, Cairns Lodge, and the place where it all started, Tebay. We're going to Tebay. I've always been intrigued by Tebay, that it could be such a different model from all the other 90-odd that dot the motorways of Britain. That, you've got this, you drive in and immediately it's different. It's so heavily planted, or it's been built in the midst of woodland, and it has local food. And this bit of the motorway, the M6, is one of the most beautiful bits of Britain. The views from this motorway are astounding.
Tebay Services, between junction 38 and 39 of the M6 in Cumbria, open on both the northbound and southbound carriageways.
Pretty seriously busy, isn't it? It's interesting walking. We're on the southbound part of Tebay, and the door's open. And what hits you is this delicious smell. And then there's the farm shop on the left, immediately you walk in, and to the right, the pie shop. And we've just ordered a venison and juniper pie, posh, right? But wild venison, which of course is now cheaper than beef, so lots of places are now using venison. The smell and the look, the sort of clean lines, no brands, just notices about food. Pie shop, chips and sauces, roast bakes and puddings, fresh breakfast baps and waffles, dog-friendly seating. It's quite unlike your standard motorway place. As you look into the farm shop, you see great big shelves of vegetables. The story of Tebay began in the 1960s when the M6 was being built through Cumbria. The road was to cut through a hill farm to the north of Kendal belonging to John and Barbara Dunning. They saw an opportunity, as John, now in his 90s, recalled.
We had a compulsory purchase order in 1965 where we had to negotiate with the department to sell the land over which, just one corner of the farm, through which the motorway would go. And so I got to know the people and what was going on, and they came to me one day and said, look, the major operators, that is all the operators on the motorway service area system, have refused to bid to build a motorway service area here. And I said, why has that happened? Because they've said there's nobody lives here and there's no business here. So we don't believe we could put a viable business on this area. And that none of them bid. None of them bid. And so my wife and I talked about it and we decided we would bid. And the rest.
If only those people could come back and see this place today. I mean, how wrong, how totally wrong they were.
Well, they assumed, because motorway service areas are all pretty well equally bad, that they all get a bit of a share of what's available on the motorway. If you suddenly come and do something different that may be rather better, more of them will come. Simples.
So, from the very beginning, you thought this was going to be different and was going to provide employment for people thrown out of work and people as farming shrank. And because you were a farmer, this led you to think that you would link up with local farmers, that they could be linked to what food you were offering.
When we began, our partners were bakers. So we bought all their bread and their cakes and things, and we were hitched to them. We had a 50-50 business, and we were hitched to them. And gradually other suppliers brought other things. We brought the milk to it until we went out of milk. And the growth of suppliers came in. The farm shops started almost the time that Sarah was taking over. So all that energy and ingenuity from a foodie, because she's passionate about food, came really with her.
Sarah is John's daughter. After a flirtation with investment banking in the city, Sarah Dunning came home to Cumbria and now chairs the expanding family business called Westmoreland. From a 40-seater restaurant serving simple home-cooked food at Tebay, the Westmoreland Group has grown massively. They own Gloucester Services on the M5, Cairns Lodge on the M74, and are in the early stages of building their fourth enterprise on the M56 in Tatton in Cheshire. Turnover is now just under 150 million, with about 10 million customers a year, around 1,200 staff, and a food business that's still heavily focused on local food from local suppliers.
The central ethos is the same as it was in the beginning, which is basically what Mum and Dad set up, which is just a service station that celebrates place. So If you look at where we are here, you know, it feels like an agricultural barn, looks like an agricultural barn from the outside. It's full of old reclaimed timbers. The food, we're standing in the food hall here. The food is really simple, but it's fresh. It's made in our kitchens, and it's good food.
That young lad said it was the perfect place to work.
That was nice. Did he say it was the only choice?
No, he didn't say that at all, no. A couple of people said, I said, we're going to Tebay. And they went, oh, it's so expensive. And I said, that's not my memory. Is that a perception you have to worry about?
It is. We worry about it a lot because price really matters, doesn't it? And it matters more today than it's probably ever mattered. And so for sure, the motorway service area industry has to think about pricing a lot. It's more expensive. You know, a coffee in a motorway service area is more expensive than on a high street, as is a sandwich, a sausage roll, whatever. And you know, there are reasons for that, because we are facilities that have to be 24/7. We're building Tatton Services. It's going to cost £65 million to build, and that's because you have slip roads and roundabouts and big car parks and 24/7. You've got to make that work. So we are expensive facilities, motorway service areas. What we try and do is never be more expensive than our competition.
While we ate our extremely good pies from the pie shop before we started this interview, you said being a family business is a superpower. What did you mean?
Well, I think we were talking about different ownership models of business, and I think we were talking about private equity owned businesses, which actually is the norm in our industry. I do genuinely believe that business ownership models drive so much, because a private equity business, or a PLC for that matter, their time frame is a 5-year time frame. You know, the average PLC CEO lasts less than 5 years, and private equity needs an exit in 5 years. So their decisions are within a 5-year framework. All their outcomes have to redeem themselves within 5 years. And I think for a family business, you know, we always say we're next generation, not next year. You know, we have the privilege of thinking about what do we want to pass on in 20 years' time.
Touring the farm shop with its cheese and deli counters and in-house butchery, it was easy to see that a high proportion of the food came from local suppliers and directly from the Dunnings farm.
My name's Ian Jolly. I'm the team leader on the south side of the butchery, and I've been here 10 years.
Oh, we're looking at the beef.
At the moment, the best seller of beef at the moment is the ribeyes and the sirloin. This is all of our own farm. Aberdeen Angus. Should be really nice and tender. Top side's a very good seller for roast on the weekend. And then there's other things. Comes down to our own lamb off our own farm, which is exceptional taste. All grass-fed, so very good.
It was 5 minutes in the car to where our own lambs had come from, Chapel Farm, where John and Barbara Dunning lived when they made their bid to build and run Tebay back in the 60s. They still own it. It's 1,000 acres, a lot of it woodland, set against a glorious view of the Lakeland Fells, particularly glorious that day in the blazing sunshine. Now the farm is managed by young Welshman Sean Morgan and his canine companion, Moss.
I've got some sheep here, and I'm just going to send him round them and show you what he does.
Moss's complete, and to us outstanding, command of that small flock of Hebridean sheep showed why Sean is the reigning champion at the English National Sheepdog Trials.
I've never heard it all done by whistles before. Here they come.
And you got Cumbria, which is to the left, and the whistle for left is, and that's a walk on. Come by, lie down. Are we out of our 500 ewes? We'll have 700 to 800 lambs, and we'll keep some of them as replacements for our breeding flock, but everything else then will go through the services, through the farm shop, and sold at the butchery counter or at the carvery in the restaurants.
Shows you what throughput that they have in that shop.
Yeah, it's amazing really, and this farm alone can't just keep that going. We keep it going in our peak season, so August to the end of January it's all lamb from the farm, and then through the winter months a lot of our beef goes through the farm shop, but in the shoulders of the seasons where this farm can't produce or provide that, they then look at other farmers that are local and are like-minded.
So what other little corners are there of the farm production that we might not?
We've got 6 colonies of bees on the farm, and we work with the Lake District Honey Company. And last year, we had the same number last year, and we had 70 kilograms of honey, which was about 140 jars of honey at the end of the season. So not only do we get the honey, they help us pollinate the hedgerows, the herbal lays and the hay meadows. So it's a win-win for us. We haven't mentioned the sheepskins.
Well, we saw them in the shop, but I mean, they come from this farm too.
Yes, some of them come from the farm as well. So everything really gets utilised.
Sean Morgan. But to understand more about how Tebay impacts the local economy, we went to see 2 independent suppliers. On the outskirts of Kendal, on a small industrial estate, is Moore, an artisan bakery founded by Patrick Moore, who'd been supplying Tebay for 20 years.
We are a busy little bakery. You know, this is what we thrive on. This is our bread and jam. We're very much caretakers, really, of the product. And 20 years ago, when we first started, the best bread you could get in the country was really bake-off, faux, crusty baguette that was full of chemicals and no skill involved at all. So, we were kind of one of the early ones, very much inspired by the likes of Paulin in France. That's always been our core values, and it's in our DNA. And we actually share that with Westmoreland because over, that entire period, Westmoreland has had exactly the same DNA and really, from the very beginning, wanted to cut out any unnecessary chemicals or added ingredients, that may be harmful to health. And it's really on the back of that and that synergy between us as 2 independent businesses from the same DNA that it's given us the opportunity to really get to where we are today, which is getting more of that product out to people who really appreciate the fact that it's the real deal.
Next was a couple who not only supply coffee, but live it, breathe it, love it. A quarter of what they produce now goes to Tebay and the rest of the Westmoreland Group.
Hi, my name's Gareth Kemble. I'm one of the owners and co-founders of Carvetti Coffee Roasters.
And I'm Angharad Kemble, the wife of Gareth Kemble, also co-owner and founder of Carvetti Coffee in Threlkeld.
We started in 2011. Probably about 2-3 years in, we started talking to Tebay, not really with an aspiration to supply. Yeah, I think it took 7 years of relationship building.
And I think they'd been watching us and keeping an eye on us as well and seeing how we were growing and the whole how the ethos kept going, that we didn't lose sight of ourselves.
They're a unique service station, to use a local coffee supplier. Coffee is like a big deal for Tebay Services. Let's face it, most people who pass will have a coffee. So they're entrusting a local business, and in our case, a local family business. Our team is a team of 6 people. So they're trusting us to deliver every single week sufficient coffee to run all their Cumbrian sites.
It's a lot of cups of coffee.
I'll never forget being in the queue for coffee, and the lady behind was complaining about the price of a cup of coffee. And I was just standing there thinking, you've got a local business roasting sustainably sourced coffee, supplying another local business who are employing so many local people, and you're complaining about like a 30p uplift in the price of a cup of coffee. But I just find it fascinating. People's perceptions of value is so different. It's unbelievable.
Tebay is allowing us to grow as a business as well. However, that growth is always going to be quite organic, but it's a big circle, isn't it, where growth encourages us to grow, which then gives us a bit more power, if you know what I mean. Power in terms of that we can offer more, and we never intend to change how we do business with Tebay Services, because this is what keeps us all together, I think. You feel like you're dealing with a family here.
A big circle of local growth with a family relationship at the centre. It is a very different way of running a motorway service station. The quality of roadside food on motorways on and off almost certainly matters most to professional drivers, the 200,000 plus HGV drivers amongst them. They're on the road night and day, supplying Britain. We already heard from those Wiltshire lorry drivers, and their verdict was not good. To get a perhaps more nuanced picture, producer Robin Markwell headed to a place where many men of the road, and they are mostly men, get their rest and refreshment at another family-owned place.
Chippenham Pit Stop, close to junction 17 of the M4. A truck stop with 152 lorry bays, hot showers for overnighting drivers, and a restaurant serving home-cooked food.
So we've got hash browns, nicely grilled, with the eggs and the mushrooms, sausage bacon toast, and then that's ready for service. So ready, and then hopefully somebody will come and take it for me.
In the kitchens, preparing breakfast for hungry drivers, I find head chef Kerry Cook.
So we cook everything, we try to cook everything from scratch, so it's home-cooked foods. We try to stay healthy. We offer vegetarian options, gluten-free. We do salads, omelettes, jacket potatoes. We do lots of poached eggs here. Not one of our favourites, because we have to watch the pan quite closely.
Still an art form getting poached eggs right, isn't it?
Yes, it is, very much so. Yes.
What's your approach to the perfect poached egg then?
Give it a good stir, get that swirl, and then crack your egg in.
My name's David Hatherall. I'm Managing Director of Chippenham Pit Stop in Wiltshire.
My name's Hannah Hatherall and I am Marketing Director at Chippenham Pit Stop.
A lot of truckers will say anything but chips. And so if you ask a man on the street what the truckers eat, most of them will come up with, bacon and eggs and Yorkie bars and chips, and yes, they do, but then don't we all? We all enjoy a treat. The fact is, if you're out on the road 4 or 5 nights a week, you don't want chips every night. You just crave, a pork chop and some veg and some mash and some gravy or whatever, just like you would at home.
I think Kerry in your kitchen, Kerry Cook, the cook, was mentioning that you've shifted to poached eggs as an option anyway.
Yeah.
And little nudges like that presumably all add up to a slightly healthier routine for them.
Yeah, I mean, we really try and have a lot of variety. In fact, we've got a burger on the menu at the moment with avocado in it, and some of the truck drivers, what, avocado? Why do we want to have avocado in our burger? It's just a healthy option. And some of them say, oh no, I'm not interested in that. And then others are like, actually, do you know what? That's a really good combination. A nice burger with a sliced avocado on top. Brilliant.
There's a divide in the lorry driving community between those who go home at night and others who overnight during long stints out on the road, often sleeping in their own cabs. That's known in the trade as tramping, and lorry cabs are kitted out to accommodate drivers for both sleeping and cooking.
Hello. Can I get up? Oh.
One driver, Eddie Kendall from AD Fuels, showed me around his facilities.
So, not a massive amount of space, but you learn to live with it. You learn to put everything where everything has its place. Obviously, we're only in here for 3 nights, then somebody else has to get in this, so we can't make ourselves too much home. Microwave's there. We've got a bed. It's all comfortable.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
What sort of stuff do you get in there then?
I don't really tend to use it as much as I try not to as much as I can, but obviously the odd curry and stuff like that you buy from M&S, I think it's probably like when you're in the services. But I've just got a heat box, which is here, which basically that just plugs into a thing, plugs into the cigarette lighter, and you just put it in there an hour and a half before you want to eat it, and it's boiling hot by the time you get to wherever you want. You can put veg in there with some water and it steams it, so it's ready as well. So it's quite good. You find ways.
Back at the cafe, Eddie hooked up with fellow driver Riz Corn over a bacon bat.
A lot of lorry drivers are taking to cooking themselves, because the services are generally just terrible, Just generally, as a rule, the truck stops are good.
What have you gone for today?
Just a bacon roll, bacon bat, general trucker's breakfast.
Hearty breakfast and then no lunch and then dinner.
generally just home cooked as well. That's always a good option as well, you know, not the stuff that's just been pre-packed, and so pretty good.
And for you guys, I mean, you're on the road so much, you must look forward to these moments, isn't it, when you can finally stop and come in and have something nice?
No, definitely. I mean, we do 4 on 4 off, so it's not so bad. I mean, I used to do trucking European, done that for 9 years, and that's a massive difference, like the services over there and the food quality and just generally the services. Italy was amazing. Italy, the food was just generally amazing. Service stops, you generally go over to Italy and it's hotels and stuff like that, spaghetti, like chicken, loads of stuff. It's just all home cooked there, you know. It's really, really good. So I used to have an air fryer, slow cooker in my old lorry.
Hang on, you used to have an air fryer inside your
air fryer in my cab, and a slow cooker, and a TV, Xbox. Yeah, the lot. Yeah, it's like a home from home.
What have you got going on in the slow cooker then while you're out driving? That's
chicken casserole, beef casserole. Just put it on in the morning before I set off. Like chop it up the night before, put it in the fridge. Like wake up in the morning, put it in there, plug it in, let it cook the whole day while you're driving around, and then just have it with some bread and butter amazing.
Can you not smell it percolating through your cab as you're driving?
Put you off a little bit. So.
Well, it might be
really
a nice
thing.
thing.
The next day though.
Leftovers are always better.
Well, yeah.
Lorry drivers Eddie and Riz at Chippenham pit stop looking for healthier alternatives on the road, even if that means cooking in their own cabs. There are some signs beyond the spread of brands that show the big players might be up for that imaginative change AA's president Edmund King mentioned. Change like Road Chef's first farm shop at Sedgemoor Services that opened last year on the M5 in Somerset, stocking food and drink from more than 40 local producers, perhaps taking a hint from Tebay in Cumbria. What a new model of local, regional, resilient food production there might be, creating local jobs, producing fresher, better food, if every one of our 90-plus motorway service stations linked itself to the land and the people around it. Is that a utopian idea? Well, maybe. Sarah Dunning, though, chair of a company who does just that, doesn't think there's anything utopian about it at all.
It is possible to create businesses that have their own model and infrastructure that, in our case, it's about local impact and it's about having a hub in a place. Businesses like ours, they prove that it can be done, and I think our job is to carry on pushing and carry on trying to do that in other places and grow and show that it can be done, because it can be done.
Thanks for listening. This edition of Radio 4's The Food Programme was presented by me, Sheila Dillon, and produced in Bristol by Robin Markwell.
Why do some brilliant business ideas come a cropper? I'm Sean Farrington, and in a new series of Toast, I'll be looking at 5 more brands, businesses and wonder products which offered a lot but didn't stick around, including a budget cinema selling tickets for 20 pence and the toilet paper we knew from school.
I remember worrying about getting paper cuts in an area that you wouldn't wish to be getting a paper cut.
Finding out what we can learn from their disappearance. Toast from BBC Radio 4. Listen first on BBC Sounds.